Yay.
Good evening, friends. Hello, Ajahn Brahm. Thank you so much for joining us.
Nice to see you all.
We are delighted to have this evening Ajahn Brahm, actually this morning if you're in Australia like Ajahn.
Yes.
Or this night if you are in Europe. Sometimes we have friends from Europe tuning in the middle of the night for a monk chat. So, this evening we have a special monk chat where Ajahn has agreed to answer some of the questions that us monastics have, since a lot of times us members of the Sangha answer questions, but have a difficult time, especially during COVID, to have access to senior monastics to ask questions, to go to monasteries and ask questions. So we're very grateful for this opportunity, Ajahn, that you're giving us all. And we have many monastics here. I'm going to there's different Sangha of Saranya Bodhi Hermitage. We're all like crowding up in. And then there's also different monastics who are watching from the live stream. So if someone here wants to start with the first question, you can actually raise your hand because I can see you here in the little screen. Otherwise, I'll start with mine. Okay, Pankaj Sugasa. All right, if you can unmute you.
So, Ajahn, I have a question about entering first jhana. What to do when the mind seems to be becoming very stable, very steady, very still, but there's still some amount of wobbling or unsteadiness in the mind, which seems to be preventing the mind from entering fully into deep samadhi, but which doesn't seem to be going away by itself. What do you recommend to do in that, where you seem to be about 95% of the way there, but that last 5% of wobbling just doesn't seem to go away? What do you recommend?
I recall this in my own practice years ago, and I was wondering, what's the problem there? And as I was contemplating this, I was actually shaving my face in the mirror, and then I noticed that the image in the mirror was moving, was wobbling, as you say. And then, just to prove the point, I held the mirror absolutely still as I possibly could, and the image was also moving in there. It never stopped moving. And I was just making a good point to myself. The reason why that you're wobbling is that which is watching is wobbling. So don't look too much at the object of your meditation at this point. This mindfulness, which is watching it, that is wobbling. And that was the trick for me, because then as soon as I realized the one was watching, forget about what is being watched. That is what is doing the watching, has to be more still. That's what worked for me. Does that make any sense to you?
Yes, Ajahn, I can work with that and see what happens. Thank you.
Yeah. And the thing which is watching is only moving because you want something. You can't see it, but you still want something.
Understood.
Yeah.
Bhante Sumita has a question.
Ajahn, I know, I think you are very famous in the world, and a lot of people also, I have the impression that you are very good in practicing jhana. So I would like to ask, just to piggyback on Bhante Sudasa's question, do we follow those jhanic factors, vitakka, vichara, priti, sukha, ekaggata, just in random order, or just in the order that it is there?
You don't even follow them. These things happen naturally. It is the main thing which you are aware of in, say, a first jhana, is the piti sukha, which is born of the five senses vanishing. And the other stuff there, it is just looking at something like a car has an engine, it has four wheels, it has a steering wheel, it has seats. That's all part of the same thing. So you don't develop one thing and then another thing and another thing. You just develop stillness, you let go. And these things are just 5 different ways of looking at the one thing. But please, to make it even clearer, that for a long time now, and the first time I mentioned this was when I was being interviewed on TV in Sri Lanka in a monk's forest monastery down south. There was no lay people there. So when the monk asked me, he said, Ajahn Brahm, can you enter the jhanas? And he said, there's no lay people here, so you cannot use the excuse that you're talking to lay people. Because if you do, and you do have anything like a jhana or a stage of enlightenment, and you mention that to a lay person, then that's a pachitya offense. It's against the Vinaya, it should not be done. But this was just to monks. Then I also realized that that video would be seen by somebody later on. So I used a teaching method, and I'm very happy with this, because instead of saying, Ajahn Brahm, you have abilities with jhanas and stuff, there's something which there is not quite right. It makes a person proud. It gives the opportunity for ego to arise. Even Devadatta could attain jhanas, and look what happened to him. And so instead of actually making claims, it's almost the same, but I always tell people in public that Ajahn Brahm cannot enter jhana. I cannot enter jhana. And I think many of you have heard that the explanation of that. And it's a beautiful Dhamma teaching. Ajahn Brahm has to disappear, first of all. My sense of self, my idea of being somebody has to totally vanish. And when you vanish, your ideas of yourself disappear. Then there is a marvelous chance that you can enter jhanas. So it's actually, this is part of the path here. You don't look at this as a personal attainment. You don't do it. It just happens when you vanish, when you disappear. Mindfulness, joy are very great in these states. Your sense of self and identity are vanishing fast, if not almost totally vanished. That's why I say, even Venerable Siddhartha, I forget the other names there, none of you can enter jhanas. You have to vanish, first of all, disappear. And this becomes a natural state, a natural abiding of somebody who is renouncing and being very, 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 very still. Does that make sense to you?
Thank you, Ajahn.
All right, thank you so much, Ajahn. And Bhante Kamalasiri right now would like to ask a question. So Bhante, please.
Hi, Bhante.
Hello.
I am not one of that forest monk. But my question also again about the jhana. You use this word when you teach meditation, jhana practice. I want to know, when you use this word, you use for that rupavachara and arupavachara jhana, or just is it parallel to meditation or bhavana?
It is meditation, bhavana, they all mean the same thing. That's the practice. But the practice which actually includes just the experience of the what's it called, the rupa loka, just where the body vanishes, where the kama loka is gone for a while. So, and I don't make any distinctions, honestly, between forest monks and non-forest monks. An example of that was many years ago, a village monk in Thailand, a young monk. he came to visit Wat Pong, Ajahn Chah's monastery. And usually that you can stay there for 3 days, 3 nights, just staying in the hall. But then no one paid him any attention because he was wearing the bright yellow robes of the village or city monks. And so he left after 3 days. No one even bothered to ask him what he was there for. It was only later on that we found out that that young monk had experience of jhanas, I think up to the second jhana. But because he was wearing the wrong color robe, because he wasn't practicing in the forests, they thought that was impossible. It was like judgment just by the robes you wear or the place where you live, which is really, really wrong. And, when I heard that, I thought, if you're staying in a village or if you're staying in a city, it doesn't matter so much that these things can be experienced by people. So anyway, when I say the jhana practice, I mean that in the meditation, in the bhavana means just you're developing things. And what you're developing is like stillness, letting go of things vanishing. You're not owning so much. And you own less and less and less, and quite naturally. And this is the important part. Naturally, the mind becomes really still and becomes powerful. So powerful that the body just disappears for a while. And that becomes the jhana experiences. And of course, this is part of the path. To say it's, Ajahn Brahm teaches this, I always counter by saying this is what the Buddha taught. Eightfold path. And that's very simple, very traditional, but Eightfold Path is the only way to abandon the defilements to become enlightened. And the eighth factor of that are the jhanas. And I often quote, they say the Gopika Moggallana Sutta, where the Buddha mentioned, someone was asking Ananda just after the Buddha's Mahaparinibbana, and asked Ananda, what type of meditation did the Buddha recommend? And Ananda replied, only 4 types of meditation. First jhana, second jhana, third jhana, fourth jhana. That's a very powerful statement by Venerable Ananda, but also it was approved at the first council by all the great arahats there. So that's authoritative. That's the only meditation which the Buddha recommended and praised. 4 jhanas.
Thank you. Ajahn and Bhante Malasiri, do you have any follow-up questions?
Actually, that was the I wanted to verify that because when I listened to his teaching, I understood in which way he used this word. Otherwise, it is the best way we have to use when we're talking about meditation practice. But mostly people think, especially the people who have studied about this Buddhist texts and especially the monks from Buddhist countries, they think he's talking about Rupavachara and Arupavachara dhyana, and like that idea. And it is some people have curiosity about that. But yeah, thank you for that explanation. Actually, I wanted to verify it.
Very good.
Thank you so much to both the venerables. And at this point, since we're talking about jhanas, I would like to bring forward the question from Venerable Aya Sakya Dhammadina, who is a lovely bhikkhuni that lives in India. And right now she was busy with chanting, but she's going to watch this later. So she asks, Ajahn, what are the Arupa jhanas and how do they lead to rebirth in the Arupa Bhumi? Does the jhana of infinite space lead to taking birth in infinite space?
Well, first of all, as anyone who's read the sutras can actually see, the Buddha never calls these arupa jhanas. The jhanas are almost like restricted to 1, 2, 3, 4. They call them like arupa attainments, if you like. It's not very a good word, attainments, but arupa levels. And as I understand the suttas, and as I understand the how these things work, that all those four arupas and the cessation of feeling and consciousness, all of that has to be based on the fourth jhana. So having gone through the four jhanas, the mind is still enough, aware enough, that whenever there's stillness and awareness, things start to vanish and disappear. It's just the same as when you close your eyes and leave your eyes closed long enough, then sight turns off. Or on your computer screen, if you don't click anything or do anything, it turns off after a while. And that seems to be the same with the mind. So when the mind is that still in a fourth jhana, then things start to disappear. And those become the entrance ways into the arupa. And in those arupa states, things are vanishing. You've got things like infinite space or infinite consciousness, but the idea of infinity in those is a little bit confusing to many people. And I prefer calling like unmeasured, no boundaries, which we can say infinite, but without boundaries, without sort of limits. What it really means is like the perception of space, of extension, is disappearing. It's going. When that disappears, consciousness, and this we're speaking here especially about the mind consciousness, that is disappearing, it's vanishing, it's turning off, it's not being used. And as that starts to disappear, of course, then you get to the state of nothingness. But that is still a perception, and that starts to vanish. And then you get this weird state, if you look at it from where you are, temporarily it looks like you're perceiving nothing, but there's nothing to perceive. So it's, in a sense, a state right in between nothingness and cessation. The mind is just turning off. And of course, in cessation, that is where the mind does turn off. It stops. And as you come out the way you came in. Things start to turn on again. But in each one of these states, the if, and this is, I'm pretty sure I saw this somewhere in the sutras, if you get to the state of cessation, you can't really get to these states of cessation, I reckon, unless you are a stream winner, an Arya. They're too refined for putuchanas. That's my idea. But to be able to actually to let go that much, to get to those arupa states, to get sort of re-arise in those states, you don't get reborn, to re-arise in those states, when the person does die, in that process of dying and death, if they can let go enough and be still, they've had experience of those states before, so they can actually allow those states to re-arise, or rather, they can let everything else start to cease. That's as far as they get. They don't let go completely, and so they can re-arise in those places. But you don't do those states for the purpose of re-arising in arupa states or whatever. The idea of rebirth, of re-arising somewhere, is pretty repugnant to people who are stream winners or above.
Thank you so much, Ajahn. And I have a question, a little bit more down to earth. And my question is, I'm a bit confused in regards to the quality of impartiality that is mentioned in the texts. So it is said that the Buddha doesn't praise some people and does not disparage others. And one of the fantastic qualities, for example, of the householder Uga in the text, who was a non-returner, is that he would offer food to the Sangha without distinguishing between virtuous monks and non-virtuous monks, so giving them the same things. But then you have other suttas in the Pali Canon where, like, for example, the Karandava Sutta, Anguttara Nikaya 8.10, where the Buddha actually recommends expelling a monk for his behavior, and he calls him trash.
Devadatta again.
Yeah. Or he describes, the marks of a fool and encourages us to see them. And in some other suttas, he outright defines people as fools to their face. So I guess my question would be, first of all, is it always a good idea for lay people to give even to evil monks or good monks? And should we monks inform lay people of evil monks or not? Like, I'm a little bit
That's a great question. The point is many monks don't know who's an evil monk and a good monk. So if we follow their advice, they probably wouldn't even give to a Buddha. I don't know. But anyway, that this is like two different levels. And the first is the level of not thinking anyone is better than another one. It's wonderful. I was so inspired when I first read this, and wow, this is just a great part of Buddhism, that conceit is thinking you're better than somebody else. Conceit is thinking you're worse than somebody else. Or conceit is thinking you're the same as somebody else. That all measurements and comparisons one to another is gone. And again, in one of the suttas, when Ananda was looking after the Buddha, sitting next to him, and then these two happened to be monks came up, and one said to the Lord Buddha, one who is fully enlightened never thinks they're better, they're worse, nor the same as others. Yes, correct, said the Buddha. And the monk went away, paid respects and went away. And the second monk said the same. One who is an arahat never thinks they're better or worse or the same as anybody else. That idea of I am, better, worse, or the same, has totally vanished in an arahat. And the Venerable, the Buddha turned around to Venerable Ananda and said those were two new arahats. And that's how arahats almost like can say to their teacher what's happened. They're not better than anybody else. They don't seek to sit on a higher chair or a lower chair or think they're the same as others. That whole distinction and discrimination is gone. So in that way, the Buddha can't praise anybody or never thinks he's better than anybody else or worse than anybody else or the same as anybody else. So I think that's what I mean there. But nevertheless, in teaching, you always have to say, well, I don't agree with that, or I think you should do it this way. But you have to be very careful with criticizing others, because a lot of times, what is the motivation for that? Why are you criticizing another person? Is it to put them down? Have you got all the facts? And so often in my life, I've been criticized for many things I never did. And I've been praised for things which I never did as well. It's all this praise and blame stuff. Sometimes you really wonder what its validity is. But its validity is you praise somebody to encourage them to do more and to do better. And you criticize somebody just to make them a little bit more aware, and maybe with that awareness they can behave better next time. But you never actually think that just because, say, Devadatta misbehaved at the very end of his life, the Buddha still said, in the future he'll become fully enlightened and arahat. So still was saying that, he's made a few mistakes. Go to detention in samsara for a few more times, like a school teacher would say. But then he'll graduate.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ajahn. That was really helpful to clarify a few doubts. And at this moment, I think Aya Santusika has a question.
Hi.
Oh, 1 second. Sorry, Aya. I can't hear you. I can't unmute you because you have to. Okay, there you go.
Hello, Ajahn.
Hi.
Thank you. I have a question about Anapanasati. I've been using it for a pretty long time. I find it extremely valuable. It seems to me it's a little like the Swiss Army knife of meditation. I can go into, the Brahma Viharas or deeper concentration or,
Yeah.
But I recently heard a very well-respected forest monk say that Anapanasati isn't meant to be instructions in meditation. It's meant to be, a description of what happens. And I think much the way you described the descriptions of jhana. And I'm just wondering what your take is on that, as we teach about it or use it ourselves.
Yeah, it's like instructions. You maybe in days after COVID, be sort of traveling from, I don't know, from where you are to say Australia or whatever. And you can actually see the landmarks on the journey. So the Anapanasati is teaching the landmarks on the journey. It does happen naturally. But as it's happening naturally, it's nice to have some understanding of what's occurring, why it's occurring, and just that it encourages you, you're going in the right direction. There are little things, just like, in the first tetrad of Anapanasati, what you're watching is a kaya sankhara. You're feeling this through the sense of bodily touch. But then, in the next tetrad, it becomes, a chitta sankhara. The joy, the happiness, the piti sukha which you're experiencing in that tetrad is actually not coming from the body anymore, it's coming from the mind. That is a powerful thing to understand, because a lot of times when you're watching that breath, it tends to change. The experience changes, and sometimes people think they've lost the breath. And they go back to the kaya sankhara when they should just let the chitta sankhara start to dominate. And that is what creates the joy and the happiness with the breath. And that's so important, because that allows you to stay where you are without needing to move. And I'm talking about sort of mentally inside. You don't do anything because it's just too much fun. And that joy and happiness gets very, very strong. And it means that the breath starts to vanish, the last remnant of the physical breath. And so then you see these beautiful nimittas. And in the third of that tetrad, you can see what's happening there, that you're aware of the chitta. And you experience that chitta, first of all, the way the mind usually experiences that chitta is like it's a nimitta. There's a beautiful light in the mind. It's not a light, it's not a feeling, it's not anything of the five senses, but it's how we interpret it, how we name it. And that shows you actually what's happening there, that now you're just doing chitta satipatthana, if you wish to call it that. And the mind is becoming very still and very peaceful. You're not aware of the breath anymore, because the chitta is much stronger. You're letting go of the five senses and the body. And so you can access the mind and the chitta. So I actually agree with that forest monk who said that, yeah, you don't have to do it, but it's sometimes helpful to have a map on the journey. Sometimes if you are traveling in an aircraft, and like the old days, you can, you're in the aircraft. It doesn't matter if you know where you are, you don't know where you are. The aircraft's going to take you to your destination whether you like it or not. But what happens is you look at the map and say, oh, this is where I am. I've got another couple of hours yet. But it's just like it's the landmarks on the journey. It can be helpful, but it's not important.
Thank you, Ajahn.
All right, thank you so much. And Ajahn, we have a question from Ayatatalaka, who asks, how can we best deepen and develop our practice amidst all the activities and duties of a monastic community life?
Yeah. Well, I can't go further than quote Ajahn Chah. He said you have to train to be a wastebasket, a trash can. So especially if you're the senior nun, you're going to get all the trash and all the rubbish from all the people you're selflessly trying to serve and help. But he said you have to be a trash can with a hole in the bottom. So you receive all that stuff from others, but it goes right the way through. And when you go back to your room, You take nothing into your room with you, which means that, you can do your jobs, responsibilities and stuff, but then you go back into your room. I've got this wonderful cave where I live. I go into that cave and I cross my legs and I meditate and I let go of the whole world. So I'm only a temporary teacher. I do it part-time. So to me, you'd be a part-time leader, piety. When you go into your room, you lock the door, no one should be able to get in, and you just cross your legs or sit on a nice, comfortable sofa or something, and just let go, disappear. Disappear as much as you can. And all the problems, like I've been in leadership roles for long enough now, a lot of times I think, I don't know the solution to this, so I leave it alone. And it solves itself. There's so many problems in life. I could have got involved and started doing stuff, but then I find when I don't get involved, problem just heals itself. Just like you have a cut on your arm, you just disinfect it, put a bandage on it, and leave it alone. And after a few days, it's all healed up. But if you've got like a cut on your hand, you put a band-aid on, 5 minutes later you look at it, no, it's not healed yet. Another 10 minutes, you pick it up the other side, no, it's still not healed. And you think, maybe I need some ointment on it, so you pick it up, put some ointment on it. And then you look at it again, and say, no, it's wrong ointment, so you're always interfering with stuff. So a lot of the time, you let go and trust. You've got some amazing nuns, bhikkhunis and samaneris in your temples. So let them look after it. They will never do it as good as you. I know that. Sometimes I give jobs to other monks. Oh my goodness, what they've done. But I let them learn on the job. And it means I have time for my own meditation, my own peace. And as many people have often said, this is lay people, that seeing a senior monk or a senior nun sitting for hours alone and not teaching, not doing anything, is very inspirational. Sometimes that's one of the greatest teachings you can give, is showing by example rather than by words. Okay?
Thank you very much, Venerable. And I have actually Bantaka Malasiri, who has a follow-up question. So let me put him.
It is not connection with any connection with the last question, but this is different. My question is, Bhante, how do you explain Yoniso Manasikara, and which is the best way, a word or good word for a good word in English for that? And the third part of the question is, there any similarities between Yoniso Manasikara and emotional intelligence?
Okay. First of all, Yoniso Manasikara, I just, years ago when I was studying Pali, noticed, the word yoni. Yoni is like a womb. And it's the origin of things. It's the source of things. So Yoniso Manasikara literally means work of the mind, which goes back to the source of things. And that was reinforced, by, I don't mind dobbing in Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi. I remember reading one of his books once, and he gave a very beautiful explanation of what Dhamma means. Dhamma is like the experience of what you have right now, and looking back to its source, where it comes from, where it originated from, why we are right here, this moment. And the opposite of Dhamma is like Atta, where it leads to, where it's going to. In the same way we have the Dhamma of the Buddha, we have the Atta Gata, the words of its meaning, where it leads to. And that was very helpful for me, because I also joined it up with the idea of Yoniso Manasikara. It's not just attention, it's attention looking at the source of things. And that's also with the Satipatthana Sutta, which is often quoted out of context. But this is where it says you notice the rise of samudaya and atagamana of phenomena. And it's not just seeing it rise and fall, You're saying, why? Where does it come from? What are the nutriments for the body? What are the nutriments for experience? Why do we, Vedana, I usually like to give them much better translations of like just feelings. I prefer them to be just experience, all the six senses. And where does that come from? Why do we experience things? What's the cause? And then, we go to, that's sense bases and stuff and contact. And why, what is the mind? Not just what is the mind, but where does it come from? Why does it arise? You see the rising and passing away of the mind, of the chitta. And that is really powerful to understand this rise and fall in satipatthana, not to see things come and go, but why? What caused it? Because when we see what causes things, we know that those things must be anicca. They won't last. Even things like chitta, all your consciousnesses, especially your sixth consciousness, mind is impermanent, suffering, not me, not mine, not a self. So, those sorts of see the Yodisya Manasikara, seeing where this chitta comes from. And that's powerful. And when you actually start to see that, and it's not just thinking about it, because thinking about it, we tend to have our thoughts distorted, by what we thought before, what our views are, and what our background is. But we see that in stillness, when our mind is very still, when the five hindrances, the pancha nivarana, are absent for a while, then we don't distort phenomena, and we can trust what we see is true. So the Yodisya Manasikara, especially when it is strengthened, purified by the absence of the five hindrances, it can see deeply into things. And emotional intelligence, of course, emotional intelligence becomes a byproduct of Yodisya Manasikara. Yodisya Manasikara, together with Parvatagosa, in the words of another Aryan, those two go together, and they abolish all the negative emotions eventually, and the positive emotions, such as kindness, such as the joy, the respect, gratitude. Those positive emotions become very strong. So with emotional intelligence, I do make a difference between kusala emotions and akusala emotions. Akusala emotions disappear, and the kusala ones get stronger.
Wonderful.
Emotional intelligence, yeah. I don't call it intelligence, I call it emotional training.
Thank you, Ajahn. And actually, Aya Suvijana had a similar question, but I think you addressed it already on how do you define Yoniso Manasikara and how do we apply Yoniso Manasikara in our daily practice and develop it. So I think you addressed it enough, but maybe you want to add something else. I don't know.
No, I know it's just boring, but the best way is just to keep doing the Eightfold Path. Keep it simple.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And if any of the venerables have a question, you can raise your hand right now. So Venerable Hu, I'm very curious to see from the Mahayana perspective if you have any questions or thoughts.
Actually, I do have a question, but it is a little more theoretical. So I think it would be good if all of you ask your practical questions first.
Are you sure?
Yes.
All right. And Bhante Sumita, all right.
Ajahn, we were talking about the jhanas.
Yes.
You mind also explaining how to use jhanas to attain sotapanna?
This is a simile which I'm sure you've heard from me before, but it is an original simile. and that is the simile of the tadpole and the frog. A tadpole, born in the water, grown in the water, spent all their life in the water, cannot understand what water is. They can study it, they can discuss it, they can do experiments with it, but they can't really know because they're in water ever since they were born. But the difference between a tadpole and a fish is that one day the tadpole grows appendages, little legs and little arms, and the tadpole soon becomes a frog. A lot of times I don't think the frog knows what it's doing when it jumps out of water for the first time. And once the frog is out of water, it's a very strange experience. For the first time, the frog is standing on the bank, and something which has always been there since it was born is no longer there. Water. And at this time, the frog can understand what water is. Doesn't always understand, but has the opportunity to. In the same way, when a person does gain a jhana, and when they come out afterwards, they notice in that experience something was missing. So one of the reasons I've been telling the monks I've been training and the nuns I've been training the last 3 months, when a jhana happens and you emerge afterwards, don't even contemplate, what was there, what was that like. Instead, see if you can contemplate what was missing, what disappeared, what vanished. And I feel that you get far more powerful insights when you realize that, so in the first jhana, the 5 senses in the body were totally gone. And that's why you feel so blissful and so still. In the second jhana, will is gone. You've got this strong samadhi. Mind doesn't move. You can't push any button or turn any switch on. And that's so blissful, not having a will. For many people, that's scary. You've just been there, you come out and, oh, that's really good. So what it's telling you is that even like will, your choice, what you decide to do, is suffering, is dukkha, big time. So little by little, these are the insights which you get. And especially the body, people think, oh yeah, I'm not my body, but we're still really attached to it. People think that their will, they make choices in life. Do you? Or is that all conditioned? It's not coming from you. It's not a self makes choices. The same, like the knowing, when the mind starts to vanish, as I was saying earlier, and you realize even this mind consciousness is not you. It's just this empty process. It's just almost like a scientific process. There's no being inside of it which decides to know this or decides to know that. All of that vanishes. And when those sorts of insights come, then you can understand why that is powerful enough to realize the places where you put this identity on my will, my consciousness, my meditation, my practice, my jhanas, that doesn't make any sense anymore. Not me, not mine, not a self. And you've got an opportunity for right view to arise. Because it's seeing what things disappear. I know many people feel that they could understand this intellectually. And I think sometimes that experientially, when you experience these things vanishing, is far more powerful. I've known too many people in my life, monks, nuns, scholars, who know more Pali and more Dhamma, from the suttas than I will ever know. But they still can't crack into being a stream winner because the experience of it's not there. That's why the jhanas give you that personal experience. say personal, I hesitated there because it's not personal, but individual, your own experience. We don't own it. Our words are very difficult sometimes, but that experience which you have is more powerful than anything you can read in books. Well, afterwards, of course, when you read the books, you find out what the Buddha said. It was pretty well said. Okay.
All right, thank you so much, Ajahn. And I have a question actually from Sikamana Achiraya, so from Nirodharam Monastery, Bhikkhuni Monastery in Thailand, in Chiang Mai. And she asks, Sikamana Achiraya asks, I understand that not self can be experienced in meditation. How can it be experienced in everyday life? Is there a mantra we can use or any other practice?
Yes, I think one of the things I was telling some of the senior monks, start to chant, none of my business. So whenever you get overloaded, stressed out, too many things to do, whatever the important job is, say, none of my business. Not me, not mine, not myself. I don't know this. So in your daily life, you do the jobs, but it works, it doesn't work. It's none of my business, not my concern. Because what's happening there is you're doing the best you can. You don't expect to complete jobs or to make them perfect. So you don't get stressed out and so busy, which is one of the worst problems. And especially with senior monks and senior nuns, people look at you and they think, no, do I want to be like this? So busy and tired, stressed out. So again, lead by example and tell others, what are you trying to achieve? You get it? Then what happens? So learn to be more simple, more peaceful. Do less, not more. And be open for failure. Failure is great. Failure is where we can, okay, I can't do this, so I can let go. Honestly, I've mentioned this many times, when I started teaching, I thought, I don't know if I can teach, I can't teach. If, people like the talks, that's great. You can help people. If they don't like the talks, that's even better. I can be a hermit and relax. So little by little, you realize what's important. Prioritize what's really important. Be peaceful. Be still. And inspires so many more people than being active. Anyway, that's just my answer to that. Probably wrong. But if I am wrong, I made a mistake. Yay! Great.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thank you so much, Ajahn. And our other friend Bhikkhunis from Aranya Body are asking, we are focusing on Chittanupassana Disvasa, now on the presence or absence of release, freedom, vimutti, chitta. How does Ajahn recommend practicing with this section of Chittanupassana?
Practice jhanas.
All right.
Because how do you know what that means? All those things of Chittanupassana, it's either like the hindrances, mind contracted, or free from sloth and torpor. Is it distracted, or is it free from restlessness and remorse? And the most important part, if it's free from those things, then you're just at the doors of jhanas anyway. And all those other ones are just described as jhanas. So, the only way you can understand the jitta is to free it from the five senses, free it from the hindrances. And then you have the jitta right there, as sometimes, as the Buddha said, just like a stream of water. And if there's hindrances there, it's all muddied, or it's just too much motion there, you can't see what's in there, and you can't see to the very bottom of that stream of water. When that stream of water is still, peaceful, and then it's so clear, you can see right to the very bottom of the pebbles in the bottom. So if you really want to see the jitta, really understand it, You've got to free it from all these other impediments, such as body and the other senses. So hearing, smelling, seeing, tasting, touching. When those 5 are gone, then you can understand the citta. Otherwise, people have got some amazing, ridiculous ideas of what this citta is. Buddha kept on saying citta rises to one thing and passes away to something else. And still people feel that the citta is going to be always there. It's permanent, it's deathless, or whatever. I don't ever use the word deathless these days. I say the undead. Because apparently the undead is movies with zombies in it. The Amata doesn't mean that. No, it's the freedom from dying, the absence of it. But of course, if you haven't experienced those jhanas and understood them, how do you know what the citta is? It's always been muddied up with some other stuff, so you can't really examine it. I think the Buddha used to call it like the goldsmith. A goldsmith in the time of the Buddha, they would purify the gold first of all, take out all the other sort of defilements from it, all the other trace elements. And once you have pure 100% gold, then you know its qualities, as a good chemist would do. If you want to know what the citta is, then purify it from the 5 senses, purify it from the 5 hindrances. You just got citta there. Stay with it. You can't contemplate in jhanas. No more than a good scientist, when they're doing an experiment, doesn't contemplate what they're recording until all the data is in. When all the data is in, so I was taught in Cambridge as a scientist, when all the data is in, you come out of the jhanas, then you contemplate. Otherwise, you just bend the truth to fit your ideas. So that's actually how we practice the citta anupassana. Do the jhanas. I know it's very boring. I always say the same thing.
Thank you, Ajahn. You're like the Buddha, saying it over and over again. So with the hope that at a certain point we'll get it.
Yeah, I do have, well, it's a chat. So I've got some private chat over here from Aranya Bodhi Hermitage. That's a really good question. How can I work with a strong attachment that arises from the strong bliss of deep concentration? My way of working with it right now is to contemplate anicca after getting out of the state of mind. Is this the right way? Have a look at Pasadika Sutta in the Digha Nikaya. And there the Buddha said that if people of other spiritualities, paths, say that you monks and nuns, you Buddhists are attached to the jhanas, he said, yes. Answer truthfully, say yes. And he said, what happens if you're attached to the jhanas? And you should answer that you can only expect 1 of 4 consequences. This is what happens if you attach to the jhanas. Stream winning, once returning, non-returning, or full enlightenment. It's not bad, is it? So, if you get attached to the jhanas, carry on. Don't try and get rid of it. You find you meditate more and more, and you contemplate more, and mind will get stronger and stronger, and the insights will come stronger and stronger. And you'll become a stream winner, once return, a non-return, or arahat. According to the word of the Buddha, there's 4 possibilities. You know, somebody once asked me in one of the courses I did, are there any dangers in practicing jhana? I have to be honest. So there is one danger I've seen many times happening if you practice jhanas, and that is you tend to lose your hair. You renounce an ordain, become a bhikkhu bhikkhuni. That's the only danger I see. Okay, next question.
Great, wonderful. Thank you, Tanajan. And Bhante Sudaso, I believe, has a question for you. So
Ajahn, one question that I have, the way that you teach meditation practice and jhana practice in particular sounds extremely similar to how silent illumination meditation is spoken about in the Chan school. So letting go of all things, dropping the five senses, relaxing, allowing the mind to enter full stillness, not sticking to anything. Like this all sounds almost identical to the way that the Chan teachers talk about silent illumination meditation. So I'm wondering if you've studied that style of practice at all, and if so, how do you feel it lines up with the approach to meditation practice that you teach? Thank you.
No, I've never studied so much in there are other traditions, but every now and again, you meet a good monk, and they've been practicing deep meditation, and you start talking with them, and you see that if you're a Chan practitioner, if you're a Vajrayana practitioner, any old practitioner, male, female, LGBTQIA+, the mind is the same. So how you train your mind, how you let go of the five hindrances, how you develop jhanas and meditation. Of course, you're going to find that in other traditions. And of course, the strong part of the meditation, the deep reflective part of those traditions would be very, very similar. And it's just some of the other stuff, which, in Theravada or forest tradition or in Chan tradition or Mahayana or Zen or whatever, some of the other stuff, is where we find differences. We go into the nature of the mind and how to free the mind, liberate the mind, and allow it to become so peaceful and still. Of course, it's not different. The mind is the same for everybody. And that's one of the other things. I can't just avoid saying this, that when I talking to some of the monks recently over here, and just mentioned to them that one of my favorite suttas, the Chulahatipatopama Sutta, was the first teaching which the Arahat Mahinda gave in Sri Lanka when he landed there. And I often thought, why? Why that sutta, not other suttas? The very first one which he gave in the island of Sri Lanka. And there it says that if you want to know what a Buddha is, you have to enter the jhana. And once you're in that jhana, even the first jhana, the bliss you experience there, one of its names is Sambodhi Sukha. And when I first read that, this is a bit much, because Sambodhi means enlightenment. It's enlightenment bliss. And everybody knows the first jhana doesn't mean enlightenment, but the Buddha gave it that description because it's close enough. You get a taste of what enlightenment is. Sambodhi Sukha. And more than that, he said, even in the first jhana, when any of you experience that first jhana, you experience what it's like to be the Buddha. There's no difference. The chitta, you come out afterwards, become stupid. The Buddha, when he comes out, doesn't become stupid at all. It's the Buddha. But in that experience there's such a closeness there. You can experience in this very life for yourself, or for your non-self, whatever you call it, experience what it's like to be a Buddha. What he must have felt like. That's for me, we call it that goosebumps when I say stuff like that, because it's true. You ever wonder what it must have felt like to be a Buddha in India, teaching 2,500 years ago? How he'd have spent much of his time? You can do that according to the suttas in the Pali Canon. Ooh. Whenever I say stuff like that, I just want to rush back into my cave and sit down. Anyway, next question.
Thank you, Ajahn. Well, Jampu Shifu, since Bhante Sudaso started mentioning Chinese Zen, wants to say something. So
Yeah. In the Chinese Buddhist tradition, the commentarial tradition specifically have reorganized the Satipatthana into a set of very systematic practices. And nobody actually practices it, even though we do teach that it is very important. But in a way, the commentarial tradition or the reorganizations of it had made it so much more complicated. It was many years later that I actually read the original sutra, the sutta, the Satipatthana, and I was amazed to find that the original is so much closer to the Chan practice, specifically when it says that observe the body as body, observe the feeling as feeling, and so on. And I thought, well, that is exactly Chan practice. Just see it for what it is, without adding anything to it. And somehow that, to me, a very, very crucial part seems to be missing in the way that Chinese Buddhism teaches Satipatthana. So when Bhante Sudaso asks that question, I can tell you, I think our practices are much closer than we may think.
I totally agree with you there. And it was some years ago when the South Korean monks started to travel around, and one of them came over to Bodhinyana Monastery for spending a rains retreat, a Wassa period there, and he had such good meditation. He went back to South Korea and he spread it around. And it's a Jogje order. They usually call themselves like Zen, but they're a very good order, and they became such good friends, especially before COVID. They'd always be traveling around. I'd go and visit them. They'd come and visit over here. And they'd even come in to spend our Wassa here. They'd always come into the Patimokkha recitations. The Vinaya was so similar, and their practice was so good. What's the difference there? They were good monks. That's one of the reasons why that you can actually see that in all traditions, I don't care what land they come from, there's some great monks, great nuns who practice really, really well. And it's wonderful to see that, even though the Buddhism separated, to northern tradition, southern tradition, or wherever, it's so easy to come back together again. And the original early teachings of Chan or whatever, it's just Buddhist texts which were taken over to China, and it still contains the important teachings. But I would mention something also, that commentaries can be useful, but they shouldn't really depend upon commentaries. Instead, depend upon the suttas, how the Buddha taught. And much of it, everything is really necessary in there. And just to mention, as many of you know, is that the Buddha picked up a handful of leaves, and he said, which are more, the leaves in my hand or leaves in the forest? Leaves in your forest are much more. He said, just the same as what I've taught you and what I haven't taught you. What I haven't taught you is much, much more than I have taught you. He said, the reason I haven't taught all the other stuff is because it's got nothing to do with the practice of the Eightfold Path, which leads to enlightenment. Everything which is necessary to become enlightened, I have taught. So sometimes you wonder just why, we have so much other stuff which comes up, even like commentaries, Abhidhamma and stuff, instead of just going back to the Buddha Vinaya, the Dhamma Vinaya, as the Buddha taught it. That's more than enough. And not just study it, but just practice it. And then basically there is no difference. That's my words. Chan tradition, Zen tradition, and the tradition in South Korea. Beautiful traditions. And so easy to be in harmony together.
And,
anyway, yeah, next one.
Jianhu Shifu actually has a question related to this conversation. So
Yes,
Yeah, sure.
my original question was kind of on this thread of thought, and that is, again, in our tradition, when we teach the Shravaka practice, we make a difference of the emptiness of the person and emptiness of the dharmas. And it's taught that the arhat understands the emptiness of the person, that is the no self, the emptiness of the five skandhas, but does not understand the emptiness of the dharmas. And for many years, I have questions about that. And when I go back to read the sutras, the Mahayana sutras, my doubts have increased. That is, it seems to me that the emptiness, the no self of the person and the Dharma really is the same idea. Why should there be two different kinds of emptiness? So I wonder what in the Theravada tradition, do you talk about the emptiness of the dharmas? Because everything is dependent arising. So, and then is there any discussion on this?
There's not much discussion on this, but everything is empty. I mean, everything. And I think that sometimes, I'm not quite sure whether this was where that idea came from in the passage you were reading, but sometimes that, even monks I know say, yeah, the five khandhas are there, impermanent, non-self, the subject of cessation, and when an arahat passes away, those five khandhas are totally absent. But, they said, there's something left. And it never ever makes any sense to me. If something is left, what is it left? Has it got consciousness? Has it got a perception? Can it feel anything? Can it know anything? And of course, they say, well, no, it's totally different than that. In other words, is it sentient? And they say, no. Oh, because if it was sentient, you have to have suffering and happiness again. Those two always go together. So I think maybe it may be that what they're saying there is that the emptiness goes right the way through, not just in the five khandhas. Outside the five khandhas, elsewhere, there's nothing. Totally empty. And a lot of times many people feel they practice so hard, and they've many lifetimes even, and they've sacrificed so much, and then at the end of their life, and when they parinibbana, is that it? Then nothing? I've got no pay packet, I can't enjoy anything anymore because I don't exist anymore. And for many people who don't understand the Dhamma, they reject that. It's part of like the bhava tanha, the craving to exist somehow, somewhere, in some place. So I think when they say all dhammas are empty as well, great. I don't think any arahat would object to that. Nothing left. I remember just good old Ajahn Chah teaching me. It's one of my favorite stories, so please excuse me for indulging. That after a good meditation I had, then he saw me and decided to try and give me full enlightenment. And he asked me, he said, Brahma Wangso, that's the full name. Why? That's like Yonisamanisakara. Where does all this come from? Why? And I answered, I don't know. I was young and stupid. At least I was honest. And then he laughed. It's one of the great things about all the senior monks which I've known. They don't criticize you. They don't call you stupid, even though I deserved it many times. Instead, they find it so funny. And then afterwards, he said, Brahma Wangsa, I'll tell you the answer. The answer to the question why is there's nothing. There's nothing. And then he looked at me with lots of compassion, said, "Do you understand now?" And I said, "Yes." And he said, "No, you don't." And he walked away. Oh, I felt so small, so low, so stupid. But I always remember that. The entire was my, me, I. There's nothing. It's beautiful. The emptiness of all dhammas, emptiness of the khandhas, everything. Whew. All subject to cessation. Okay.
And thank you,
But
Ajahn.
if
Yes.
if I can contribute something to that.
Yes, please, yeah.
Because that question from the Jinhu Sifu.
Yeah, yes, yes.
Yes. This is the way in the original books in the Pali text also there is mention about that word which you use the emptiness, but the original word is sunyata.
Yeah.
That is English translation.
Yes.
Sunyata, that word used in Pali text for the mind free from defilement. That is the meaning of that. The mind free from defilement. That is the sunyata mind or empty mind, empty from defilement. But after first century, during the fourth council in Gandhar in northwest India, in the fourth council, they had the debate. The monks who was in that time in that Indian peninsula, the Sri Lankan monks or Malaysian peninsula, the monks, they did not participate to that council, and otherwise that debate it it is not any relation with the Theravadian Pali text. It is only come the Pudgala Anatma and Dharma Anatma, that debate between the two group of Mahayana. Then, according to Theravada's explanation, whatever come to mind, that is Dhamma. I think that is the thing explained by the Ajahn also. Then, that is definitely that is definitely not Atma, no Pudgala.
Yeah.
Therefore, it
Yeah.
is Sunyata. Therefore, this debate not in Theravadi tradition, just only it happened after fourth council in it is the one of debate
Oh, yes, yeah.
according in the Mahayana tradition.
Yeah. I can still agree with it. All dhammas are empty too.
Well, the Chinese understanding of the Shravaka practice are mostly from the Sarvastivadin commentarial tradition, which we are taught they actually believe that they are fundamental atoms for the four elements. But it is just one of the many Shravaka lineages or traditions.
Yeah.
And Nagarjuna argued against it, said that that's not true. So I think when we go back to the sutras, for me, when I go back to the Mahayana sutras, it doesn't make sense that the arhats do not understand the emptiness of the dharmas. Actually, the text will not go through that well in many places. But when I accept the idea that there's just one kind of emptiness, then the text goes through much better.
Good.
Well, I think Bhante Sudaso is saying that Sravasiyada doctrines are also rejected by traditional Theravada explanations. Maybe Bhante Sudaso, do you want to share something?
Yeah, just confirming once again that Jinho Shifu pointing out that this idea of phenomena not being inherently empty, the Sarvastivadin view that things are absolutely inherently real, is, as far as I can tell, also rejected by the Theravada schools. Not just rejected by the Mahayana schools, it's also rejected by the Theravada schools. So the Sarvastivada died out a very, very long time ago, and it may have been partly because of holding on to peculiar doctrines of that sort.
Yeah. But to me, it's quite amusing that we have so many different, we say the Theravada holds like this, Theravada holds like that. But there's so many Theravada monks. I know they have so much diversity in their understanding of the Dhamma. And we're the same in all so-called ideas of schools of Buddhism. But is there really a Theravada Buddhism? Or is it just lots and lots of monks and nuns who follow like that and have a diversity of views? And the Theravada Buddhism would always allow that, as long as you don't go too far, off the planet, and you're still practicing. Because when we start practicing our Eightfold Path, we have all sorts of weird ideas. But little by little, as we practice more, with good teachers, some of those really weird ideas, I call them weird ideas rather than wrong ideas, but they get sort of improved upon. And as long as we do have that friendship between other traditions, we actually do learn so much more, and we're not so isolated. One of the problems I see in modern Buddhism, sometimes it does become isolated. My school, my teacher. So I'm a follower of, say, Ajahn Chah. I'm a follower of the Dalai Lama. And in traditional Buddhism, we never had that at all. All we had was our teacher would be the Dhamma Vinaya, not a person, but the teachings left by the Lord Buddha. And so we go for refuge, as I always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha. I never go to refuge to the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and Ajahn Chah. It's always to this wonderful Dhamma Vinaya, that's your teacher. And that saves a lot of problems there. So again, the diversity is quite useful because it does allow us to challenge our understanding. We do listen to one another. And sometimes we get it wrong. We're honest enough and selfless enough to admit that sometimes we're wrong. And so we can improve and grow. So it's not very helpful to reject anybody.
Thank you, Ajahn. Well, we definitely agree here at Empty Cloud Monastery, since we're a non-sectarian monastery. You're breaking into an open door, as we say in Italy, where I am from. But we're at the end of our time together, so I would like to see if any of the Venerables have a last question. And if so, you can raise your hand. Well, since I don't see any raised hands, then I will ask a question on behalf of Gita, who says, what should one contemplate at the time of death? The qualities of the triple gem, anicca, anatta, dukkha, one's own good qualities, deeds, the contemplation of nibbana, emptiness, and the unconditioned?
It really depends what you've been doing in your life. Can I finish off with one of those? Because I haven't told many funny stories, but somebody told me that great story of that Sri Lankan businessman in Colombo. He'd only go to the temple on Wesak Day because his wife forced him to. And so when he went there, he heard the monks say that your last thought on the time of death is really crucial. And the best thing to think about, according to this monk in the temple in Colombo, the best thing to think about is the Buddha, the Dhamma, and the Sangha. And if you think of the Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha when you die, then you're guaranteed a place in heaven. That's what he heard. So anyway, he went back home and he thought, that means I don't have to go to the temple anymore to go to heaven. I don't have to give donations to these monks anymore. I can stay at my business all the time, as long as I think of Buddha, Dhamma, and the Sangha when I die. I said, how can I make sure that that happens? And he came out with a beautiful solution. He had 3 sons. The next day he went to the lawyer and he changed their name, the eldest son to Buddha, second son Dhamma, third son to Sangha, because he knew they'd be at his bedside when he died. And sure enough, he never went to the temple again. And when he was dying at his hospital bed, his 3 sons were around him, and he kept looking at them thinking, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, I'm going to heaven. And then just before he breathed his last breath, he was thinking, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha, my 3 sons, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Then he sort of suddenly thought, if Buddha, Dhamma, and Sangha are in the hospital, who's looking after my business? And that's when he died. And he didn't go to heaven at all. You can't work the system. So when you do die, in that dying process, it depends what you've been doing before. If you know how to meditate, meditate. Let go. Remember the beautiful qualities of your life. And one important thing, for some people, it's best not to have too many people around you when you're dying, or not playing, sort of chanting all the time, because sometimes people want to die peacefully. So just get out of the room and let a person pass away peacefully in their own way, quietly, remembering the Dhamma they've done in the past. If they're very strong practitioners, you don't need to give them that much support, except the support of quietness. Here are the empty lodgings, monks, nuns. Meditate. Same as when we're dying. Keep it peaceful, quiet. And let that person, if they're a good practitioner, let them just close their eyes and get into their meditations and go deep and see how deep they can go, how much they can let go, how much they can disappear. If they're not such a great meditator, then they may need someone to keep reminding them of their good qualities. But of course, the last thing to do when somebody's dying, anyone who's crying and saying, oh, I don't know how I can live without you, please keep on going, don't leave us yet. Those are the people who should be sent out of the room. So you can die without your relations and loved ones' emotional baggage disturbing you. Dying is a personal process. It's private. Other people can help you if they're inspiring. But too often, they sometimes cause problems. And if there's any ones in Malaysia and Singapore, when I used to go there, sometimes you have one relation, who was a born-again Christian, and they would go with their pastor when you were on your deathbed and trying to convert you at the very last. And they're trying to convert you so much that in the end they were causing so much anxiety for the person who was dying. And the solution was quite obvious, and I suggested it to so many people over there. Then if you've got a daughter or a son who's of a different religion, they try and convert you at the very end out of their idea of love for you. Then on your deathbed, please convert. Please become a Christian when you're deathbed. And then when they go out the room, because they've done their task, then put your hands up, say, Buddhang Savanang Gacchami, Dhammang Savanang Gacchami, Sanghang Savanang Gacchami. You can convert one way, you can convert back again. That way you get rid of them and you can die peacefully. It's a bit sneaky, but they sneaky on you, you can be sneaky back.
Thank you, Ajahn. I'm sure Gita will appreciate this advice. And Vic asks, Ajahn, some Thai Ajahns teach going straight to pure knowing as an object of meditation. Is this just accessing the citta sort of in the second tetrad or like halfway to Sinmay? Or is it simply a sign of a more mature practice?
No, it is as simple as saying you don't know what pure knowing is. What is pure knowing? Are you still? Are the hindrances disappeared? So you ask those questions. To be a pure knowing, the hindrances have to have totally disappeared. Have to be some stillness there. It has to be a jhana. people always like to make shortcuts. And it's the shortcuts which cause all the problems. Because actually there is a shortcut, and that shortcut is called the Eightfold Path. It means you can't just go to straight knowing. You've got to have the right view, right motivational intention. You've got to keep your precepts. You've got to have your energy and your mindfulness and your jhanas, free of hindrances. So some of these little tricks to people, they're wasting people's time. You can't just go straight to pure knowing. As far as I'm concerned, the pure knowing is the fourth jhana, where the mindfulness is parisuddhi, with equanimity. That's pure knowing. If you can go straight to pure knowing, I mean real fourth jhana, great. But what other people talk about pure knowing, it's not pure knowing at all. Okay.
All right, thank you. And then the last question is from Christine, who says, Ajahn Brahm, I tend to wonder why the mind is not naturally enlightened. My understanding is that asking this question with a conventional mind is itself a hindrance. Is this correct?
Why the mind is not naturally enlightened? It is because people don't even know what the mind is. So naturally enlightened is because we have hindrances. And because naturally, we have our cravings and desires. So to become fully enlightened and fully at peace, by saying naturally, we have to let go of all of our desires. What is natural anyway? Because natural is, people mistake natural for normal. Normal, usual for human beings is they get angry sometimes, they disagree with each other, they shout at each other, they hit each other, they go to war with each other, they make love, and they have children together, they have a family together. You look at sort of the monastic lifestyle, monks and nuns, most people think it's really unnatural to live like this. So what is natural? So anyway, little by little, when you let go, and letting go is a very difficult thing to do because it means we're not just letting go of our choices and our will, we're letting go of our idea of who we are. And for that to happen, then the mind gets very powerful. So the problem there is what people think is natural, what's not unnatural. I remember just going, last time I was in London, going past a restaurant, and it was selling free-range sausages. This is crazy. What do you mean free-range sausages? So people use these words in really weird ways, which don't make any sense at all. Also, you may have like free-range bananas. Does that make any sense at all? And natural progress. So we have the Eightfold Path. So keep it simple.
Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. All right, thank you, Bhante. So that's the last question for tonight, and we can end with some appreciation in the traditional way. So, Hannamayam Nammakataya Sadhu Karam Nadamase. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu,
Anumodam.
Thank you
So
so
thank
much.
you. Thank you for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you. And thank you all for the people who have asked a lot of questions. If we didn't get to yours, you can go to Buddhist Society of Western Australia on the YouTube channel, and where Ajahn Brahm gives teachings on a regular basis, and you're welcome to ask them directly there to the channel. So there is one good thing about this pandemic, many bad things, but one good thing is that all the monastics, more or less, are online sharing the Dhamma more than ever. So Ajahn Brahm definitely is doing a lot of bodhisattva activity in that sense. And we're all very grateful for that. So yes, BSWA, Buddhist Society of Western Australia, you can see more of that. And you can keep on tuning in and on our channel, because we're having several different monastics of all different traditions, including Venerable Ajahn Brahm, who's a very senior monk in the Changtai tradition of Chan Buddhism. So he will be with us in the next few weeks, sharing some Dhamma, as well as Thupten Chodron, and Venerable Brahmali also has
good.
Lots of great things. All right. Thank you so much, Ajahn, and thank you everyone for joining in.
Bye.